Welcome to Booked, the bookstore education podcast brought to you by the American Booksellers Association. This episode is part of our Indies Introduced series, where we spotlight debut authors handpicked by booksellers from around the country. In each episode, a bookseller from the Indies Introduced panel will interview the author of a debut title featured in our program.
Thank you for joining us today. My name is Katie Orphan, and I am all the things at Orphan Books in Los Angeles, California. And I'm in conversation today with Georgina Chadderton. She is an Australian cartoonist. Her work has been featured in outlets including The Nib and VoiceWorks magazine. They are a co-founder of Paper Cuts Comics Festival, an independent annual celebration of graphic novels held in Adelaide. When they're not drawing, Georgina enjoys eating pizza and playing roller derby. And as I have just learned, Georgina is a former bookseller themselves in a number of venues. So I'm excited to get their perspective on having a debut book as a former bookseller herself. I get to be here as a member of the most recent Indies Introduced panel for young readers. And Oh Brother was one of my very favorite books from this season. There is a lot to love about this book. It is a graphic novel, a memoir, and the art itself is delightful and charming. It is accessible, and I hope people understand what I mean when I describe it as friendly. Like, I look at the art and I'm like, oh yeah, no, like I feel comforted by looking at it. And it's about some really important subject matter. It's about Georgina's adolescence and growing up with her brother Rob, who, as we would describe it here in America, has high support needs, autism, and what that looked like for her family and what a pivotal time in their life specifically looked like. The start of high school, the wonderful changes that puberty brings, a new home, and all of the challenges of adjusting, especially for anyone who is unfamiliar with the neurodivergent difficulties in transitions. All of those things bring their own special challenges. And the way that Georgina writes about their family, their childhood, as I have described it previously, it doesn't shy away from some of the difficult parts, but the amount of love they have for their brother shines through in everything. So I'm really excited to get to be talking today with Georgina all the way from Adelaide, which is however many hours ahead plus half an hour, the magic of time zones. Georgina, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to talk to you about the book, and thank you for so many nice things. I was like, oh, just sitting here like, oh, I can't take any more compliments. It's just so nice.
Well, I will do my best to restrain myself, but there will probably be more as we progress. As we talk about the book, it's, I never want to spoil major story points for anyone in talking about things. And it's funny because in this book specifically, you have both a lovely sort of forward introduction to the reader, as well as some really charming like after matter where you talk about your process and your family. But I'm like, but I still have questions about your process and your family.
I
Um,
mean, I could have definitely done like a whole nother book that is just about the process and the family. Like, yeah, yeah,
well, perfect. We'll
yeah.
we'll start to cover some of that ground today during
Perfect.
our time together. My first question for you is, um, was there a specific moment or incident that led to you wanting to write this book?
I don't know if there was a specific moment. I guess just it was uh like a collection of events, like just growing up and not seeing my experience and not seeing my brother reflected in media of any type, whether it was a book or a TV show or a movie. Like the closest thing that we had was like Rain Man and I Am Sam, which are obviously very specific examples, and still not even. And even though my brother has what I think people would actually associate with fairly like poster child autism in some ways, they still weren't actually reflected in either of those two movies. And there wasn't really anything in Australia as well. So like those two things are American. So the combination of like not seeing my experience, but then also not seeing my like environment reflected as well. So I think both of those things were fairly instrumental into like why I wrote the book. And I'd always been telling stories. Like in high school, a lot of my English subjects, whenever we had to write a creative story or something, I would often, in hindsight, it's like, oh yeah, it's probably processing quite a lot of stuff. Um, and yeah, so I think there was lots of little things that led to it. No specific thing that was like, yes, I must do this thing. I must go out and do it. It was just like, oh, it was just something inside me that I wanted to share and connect and make for other siblings. So like, yeah, that young people or even old people, people my age. I consider myself old now, I guess. I don't know. Um, yeah, working with a lot of young people because I run workshops and seeing similar kids in like either like me or like Rob or the combo. So yeah, having something. So the short version is no, there was no specific one. Lots of little things. But yeah, that's sort of why I started writing it. It was kind of just there, I mean, it took 10 years. It wasn't like it was just a magic thing that I managed to do. Yeah.
Yeah. In in the process of writing this, and I I feel like I'm gonna keep just using the verb writing, but I want to
It,
be clear that encompasses also all of the art that goes into it.
I
Um,
consider my art like just part of my handwriting, really. Like it's just an
ah,
extension of the storytelling for sure. So I'm happy for the term writing. Absolutely.
perfect. In writing a memoir and in writing Oh Brother specifically, were there new things that you realized about yourself, either like who you are now or looking back at your adolescence and seeing things you hadn't noticed before?
Yeah, so I mean the big headline fact is that I also got my own autism diagnosis later in while I was working on the book. So when I was 32, I was diagnosed as autistic as well. Obviously very different to my brother. And I guess it was kind of more like permission to be autistic was the reason I followed up the diagnosis. But working on the book, working with young people, like I mentioned, and seeing them and going, oh, that's kind of what I was like as a kid, and it's similar effect of like my own queer and gender identity as well. It's like, oh, I think I have terms now for what I didn't have as a young person, and it's really, I'm going to start investigating those while also working on this book. So I didn't it, like from the point of view of how it affected the book, I tried to keep that as like it's still just me and my childhood, but I didn't say in the book proper that I'm autistic or that I'm genderqueer or any of these things because that's not what I had the terms for at the time. So I wanted to keep it as sort of timepiece accurate as possible. And I also didn't want siblings who don't have a diagnosis, particularly if similar to me, they maybe not don't get diagnosed till later in life, or they don't get diagnosed at all because that's just also a possibility. That they didn't feel like they couldn't have a sibling book of because there are still lots of people that have a sibling that has different and more complex support needs, but it's still good to see there hopefully something similar, some similarities. And obviously my experience is its own thing. Like it's not everyone's experience, and hopefully we'll get more and more people writing and sharing their stories, so we can have more people you can connect to and relate to and see your experience represented. Yeah, so working on the book definitely made me. I think it was something as a kid. I always was like, oh, every time someone describes Rob's autistic traits, I'm like, that's kind of how I feel. But I'm obviously not Rob. Like I can communicate using words, which my brother cannot. He uses his own he's what's called non-verbal or non-speaking, depending on who you talk to. And he uses sounds and things called echolalia. So they might sound like words, but they're not necessarily mean exactly the same thing. And to him, but you kind of just you have to get it's all about vibes. It's all vibes. And when you spend more time with him, you understand those vibes a bit better. And yeah, so like that big communication difference seems to be like the main thing, but like we both have certain sensory things, particularly around clothing and material. Like we both love watching our same things over and over again, like those kind of things. But because of how I can mask and present, I can push myself to not have to do those things, whereas Rob can't in with how his brain works. Um, yes, to the detriment of my mental health, but it's getting better now, so there's a positive end. So even though I didn't have that in the book, I wanted to make sure it was in the back of the book, in the sort of the back matter, to make sure it was clear, like this is a thing that I'm happy about and it's good. And I have like my next memoir, I want to delve into more about the like queer and gender identity elements of my teen life, and like who am I kind of stuff, which was sort of hinted at in this one.
It I I will say when I got to the end of the book and read your note about diagnosis, I was like, ah, good. I'm glad. I'm glad you saw that, because
Yeah.
some of the things, that you talk about as far as your own sensory issues,
Mhm.
there were a few things where I was like, she she must know by now she's also autistic.
Yeah, it's
So
really interesting because like I didn't when I was writing that bit, like I didn't have the diagnosis. I was always like, yes, I feel it in my body, but like the permission again because of having Rob as a brother, it's like that's what autism is. So clearly not me, which I think a lot of people are in similar situations.
yeah.
But also it was really interesting. Like I still didn't think I was necessarily, even though, yeah, partway through writing the book, I got the diagnosis. So I did know while I was writing and drawing and stuff. So, but I didn't really change much other than just like my attitude. I don't know, while I'm making it. And it's interesting, like lots of feedback that I've got from particularly adults, like late diagnosed adults saying like, "Oh, I'm really glad that you put that at the back of the book because the whole time I was like, I relate to Gina, and I am also like AFAB late diagnosed, including a bookseller, a wonderful bookseller called Nico. They contacted me from Portland. They were lovely.
Yeah.
They wrote this beautiful thing where they like said they picked it up and like were just flicking through to look at it, and then ended up reading the whole book, which is obviously the biggest compliment as an author, someone who's like you just get sucked into a book. So that was such a beautiful and and then it blew my mind that it was across on the other side of the world, someone who had no connection to me. Like when your friends and your family like, oh, what a great book, good work, you, which is nice, obviously, but when it's a random person who has no obligation to tell you that your book is good, and that they connected to it. That's yeah, it's an extra step. And also, as a bookseller, like it's what you want to hear, hearing other booksellers getting something out of your story. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. But since you mentioned a tiny bit like what the, sort of general responses of people
Mhm.
in your own orbit, uh, I was curious, since you are writing about your family, what has their response been during both the writing of this book, especially since it took you 10 years? They've undoubtedly had lots of time to think about it. And now, being able to read the finished book, like, yeah, how I guess specifically your parents, but yeah, people who are reflected in this book, what has their response been?
Yeah. Well, I'm very lucky that as my parents are presented in the book, I would say that's pretty much what they're like. They're very lovely and very supportive. And you know, just nice humans. So they my dad is a retired doctor and also like very science. It has aphantasia, so I can't visualize anything. For example, those are just some fun facts about my dad. And he loves both mum and dad love problem solving, but they just do it in slightly different ways. Like mum loves sharing things with people. Like she loves I believe the term is pebbling, like finding little things and like gifting you like, oh, here's a little thing that I think you would like. Or she'll like often text me, it's like, I saw this on the side of the road, do you think you can use it for, like, loves like making sure there's no waste as well. Like they're both very good at, yeah, making sure we can reuse things as much as possible. So like always coming up with crafty idea. Mum's craft, dad's like woodwork and tech. That's sort of their split, but both like problem solving and figuring out things, which was very useful for Rob, my brother. So like figuring out like different ways, like making really like hardy iPad like out of wood cases. So because he got so excited, he'd often bend the iPad, like you'd see it, and it's just like because he was so excited. So they'd had to like try and figure out a way to like do that, but you can still press the button or do whatever you need to do at the time. So things like that. And then and Mum similarly, like how can she make clothes that are comfy for Rob, or like particularly when he was younger, found it hard to keep clothes on just because they weren't comfy or whatever. But there are certain situations when you leave the house when it's unfortunately not acceptable to be naked. So like she'd like make these like fun sort of onesies for him to wear, which were reasonably comfortable and like fun color. Like his favorite color is pink, so like wearing fun pink colors and things like that. So yeah, that's sort of what my parents are like. So they were very supportive, and they definitely like I made sure that they read early versions, like particularly once they were in more comic stage, so you could see it as a comic. I'd ask them to read it and give me feedback, and particularly around what they were saying in the book. So making sure they were comfortable with what words I'd put in their mouth. And I think there's only a few things that had to not even get fully changed, but just tweaked a little bit so they were comfortable with what it was, or it was more accurate to what they remember as they were adults when I was a kid when I'm like writing some of these memories. So like I know that I've probably remembered them differently. And also I interviewed both of them at the early stages to just see their point of view of what it was like having Rob and me, and how that, because again, like as I started when I was 25, so I was like a young adult feeling like I can get this book done in a year really confidently. Did not happen, obviously. But it was really interesting talking to them and reflecting on what it would have been like for them as like not a they would have only been a few years older than me at that stage when they were dealing with a lot of these things. So yeah, that was a really interesting process. But yeah, so they've definitely been involved, and um, yeah, they tell all their friends about it and making sure everyone's reading it, which is very nice. And um, yeah, so that's great. Obviously, a lot of people ask me how Rob thinks about the book, and if you read the book, you'll probably realize that he can't tell me that. But one lovely story in classic like little brother fashion is I got a few author copies before Christmas last year, because it came out in Feb this year. And we were showing him and his support workers who'd been working with for about 10 years, and they're great. And we're like, we love them. And we're like, they were in the original version of the book, and I was so sad I had to cut them out actually, because they were an important part of Rob being supported outside of like once he moved out of home, and do really good things with Rob. And so we're showing them, and they're like, they're getting excited about it. And then Rob looks over and takes one of them, my copy, of course, because I had like three copies, one for mum and dad, one for my partner, one for me. He takes that copy and he puts it under his arm, and he's like, no, no one's getting this. Which is great. It's like a high compliment. Apparently he does like get it out and flick through it, which is lovely. But of course he stole my copy because he is my younger brother, and it's the most little brother thing you can do. Yeah. And so I had no copy at that point for a couple of months until they sent the next lot of author copies. So thanks. Yeah, but we don't know if he can recognize himself in them because obviously they are cartoony as well. They're not photos, but we just don't know. And but I'm just glad that he likes it enough to keep it in his space. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And him taking your copy. Like that does fit very well with some of these
It
stories
really does.
in your book. I'm like, ah yes, his unerring ability to find your stash of candy. I'm like, yeah,
Correct.
yeah,
Yep.
this
Hmm.
peak little brother,
It's because
regardless of anything
he
else.
loves me, right? He
Yeah.
loves me. He just wants, it's like, your younger siblings always want to be like you because they think you're cool. Let's go with
Yes.
that. I
Yes.
don't know if
I
my
think
brother
we
has ever thought I
should.
was cool, but
I'm 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 sure that he probably has in some in in various
yeah,
ways.
yeah.
Yeah. What because we're getting to talk about this after your book has been out for gosh,
Six
like
weeks-ish, I
yeah,
think.
yeah, I
Maybe. Yeah.
think so. Yeah, like
Mm.
it came out mid February. So
Yeah.
yeah, 6 weeks. So a lot of the folks that we're talking to for this podcast, it's before their book comes out.
Mhm.
So with you, I can ask, what has the reception to your book been like in Australia specifically? I mean, I did enjoy getting
Sure.
to hear about the US bookseller that contacted you. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and like I've been just a little sidebar. Generally, I've been surprised at how many people from the US have been contacting me. So like there's been teachers and there's been parents and like through emails or through Instagram. So that's really, again, really lovely that because I think initially when it was picked up, there was a lot of concern around it not being relatable because I really was like, I really want it set in Australia. And one of the suggestions was like, can you make it more general or maybe set in the US? And I was like, no, I can't because I can't write about the US. I've never been there. There's no point of me doing that. And it's not my it's not my life. So there was a few changes that were suggested, particularly to make it easier for US, but not just US, but also like because it's the books in the US, Canada, UK, and Australia got picked up by the four territories at the same time, which I think is quite uncommon. Which I now know this after the fact. I was like, oh, surely this happens occasionally, but apparently it doesn't happen very often. So working with lots of different editors at the same time to make sure the book fits in their slightly different markets, which is interesting. But yeah, like in general, the reception has been really good, I think. It's a little bit, like my partner Owen, who very kindly also did all of my lettering for the book. So it was a font of my handwriting, which he helped me craft, and then he all did the letter setting too. I think otherwise deadlines would not have been met. And also did help with some flatting because he's a comics maker himself. And he has been vetting. He's like, I will look at all the reviews and I will read to you the ones I think you should hear, which is very kind. But then occasionally I'll Google like my brother Goodreads or whatever just to see what people are saying. And he's like, you're not allowed to do that. Don't do it. Fortunately, everyone's been very nice so far. But yeah, of course, because I will only focus on the negative reviews if I find one.
Well,
It's
of
part of the call,
course.
right? Yeah, part of
Oh
the
yeah.
course.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think in general it's been really lovely. The highlights for me have been, yeah, like my friends reaching out who maybe don't have the specific experience of growing up with someone like Rob, but have either connected to that because they maybe one of their friends was me, like so they did and they didn't realize what that friend was going through, and now they have a bit more of a like, um, yeah, can reflect on that a bit more, or they can connect to some of the as I said, hinted at gender and awkwardness stuff of me, or like just, and yeah, so it's really great having people say that it's been like can ask questions and which is what I really wanted from the book is like I want people to be able to connect to it if they've got that experience of any of the things, but also if they don't, I want them to feel more comfortable asking and talking about it because like I think people are concerned about talking about disability particularly, like they find it really scary if they're not in that world. And I can understand that for sure. But I think that's why we got to be like, yo, let's talk about it because that's how it gets better. Like, um, and it's not a bad thing. It's just like a different thing that we need to make sure we figure out and know how, empathy. It's a good thing. We should all be more empathetic, right?
We sure
Yeah, so I
should.
think in general it's been great. Uh, Highlight was a young reader at an early launch, so it'd only been out for maybe a week at this point, and I did a little live comic reading with my dad at the library that's in the book, so Brighton Library. It's like my parents is still their local library, so we organised the launch there, and Dad and I did a little reading, which is that section of the book. Which is very short, but it's just like a little taster for people. And one of the young people that came along, they came up and like at the start, I was like, "Oh, has anyone read the book yet?" Assuming like maybe one or two, and I was like, "Oh, everyone had." I was like, "Oh, that's actually quite good. Well done, everyone." And there's like, "Has anyone read it more than once?" Expecting no answer, and then like kid was like, "Yes, I have read it like 3 times." And like when they came up and showed me their copy of the book, it's like when a kid loves a book, like you can see it.
Mhm.
That was really lovely being able to like see the love in the book and then sign it and stamp it. I made myself a little author stamp so I can officially sign all the books as well.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, that part is especially fun. I'm like getting to interact with readers and to already have like a reader who is that excited about your work. Like
Yeah,
that's magical.
it
Um,
is. Yeah, I feel very privileged to be able to be in a position to have a book so widely published and like that I can connect with these young people because like I know how important that would have been to me as a young person if I found that book in the library or if I found it in like was recommended it by a bookseller saying like, "Ah, oh, you like comics, you say, autism, you say, have I got the book for you?" Um,
and that is what all of the booksellers listening to this should
yeah,
remember. That's the approach
yep,
when you have anyone who's coming in and looking for a new read. You like comic books?
great, tick,
Autism? Great.
perfect, yeah.
Here you go.
Oh, and my partner, Owen, I mentioned before, he always tells me that I never like emphasize this when I talk about the book because it's like, oh, it's important topics and awkward and all these things. It's like, you have to tell them there's jokes. It's funny. I'm like, oh,
Oh
yeah.
yeah.
So apparently it's funny. So there we go, which is good. I wanted it to be on purpose.
Yeah.
But humor can always not necessarily land. So that's why I'm glad people are think it's funny, which is good. And there's lots of little jokes in there, like legal jokes. So some of the legal things where like I had to change labels. So like I tried to keep things as accurate as possible. But for example, there was a couple of ones where the legal department in whichever country was like, no, don't do that one. We can't, like, we're not sure. There was a lot of stuff around because, like, Target, we've got Target in Australia as well as the US.
Okay.
I assume it's the same Target, but I actually haven't investigated that. Um,
I think so.
but
I think it's just our
I think so,
Kmarts that
right?
were
Exactly. That's what
very
I would have.
different. Yeah.
Yeah. But I think your Target is heaps better than our Target. Like, I think it's got
Well,
heaps more good stuff.
I mean, your Kmart
Yeah,
is far superior to what
I
we
see.
had. And we don't
Yep.
we don't have Woolworths anymore. And you guys still have
Which we
Woolies.
definitely
So
have Woolies. Yeah,
yeah.
Woolies is the
Yep.
Australia. If you want to feel really Australian, calling it Woolies.
Yes.
Hmm.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, so in like a little side note, like Rob loves ripping up junk mail. And like it was specifically, we got a lot of Target toy catalogs, and they were like, "We're going to put this book in Target. We can't call this junk mail." And I'm like, "It's just what?" Things like that, where I was like, I'm not saying Target is junk. I'm just, So things like that, we have to change the little words and stuff. So some of them are different between the different editions. Like Australia was fine with that; they did not care. But the US was like, no, no, no. But I don't think it's actually in Target in Australia. It's in Big W. Go figure.
Okay.
It's all these things like I have never had to worry about as a zine maker, like a DIY self-publisher, and you like have to learn all these things. Yes. Anyway, but there's a couple of
Yeah.
other jokes in there around salad dressing and my backpack specifically. If there's some little Easter eggs for those who want to read it.
Okay.
They're so small. They have no point to the plot at all. It will not
Is
affect your book reading.
no. Let me without, you know,
Yep.
ruining the joke for anyone, does it have to do with the branding on
Correct.
your backpack as a kid?
Yes.
Okay. Because I
Yep.
I saw that and it gave
Yep.
me a laugh because I remember the
Excellent.
brand that it
Yep.
is playing with. And I was like, oh no, this is a much better, this is a much better brand for an
Thank you.
anxious child.
Yeah.
Um, no, I love
Yeah.
that. Well, I was curious, what it was like having your book picked up for the US market. I didn't realize it was picked up for all four at the same time.
Yeah.
Were there, yeah, what sort of things, were there any other things other than what you have mentioned that had to kind of be adjusted between the four
Mhm.
different countries?
Yeah, so I think the main difference was between Australia and US. So they're sort of the two main editions. Then the UK, for some reason, despite using the same spelling as us, have used the US edition. Don't ask me. Uh, Again.
Okay.
But they changed, they did different printing, quite like the paper stocks, like the four different editions are all slightly different paper stocks, different cover colors and like taglines on things. And the Canadian edition, of course, used the US spelling, although they do also have some UK spell like similar spelling stuff, like color, for example, is a big
Mhm.
one with U or no U. Um, but then they're obviously closer to the US globally. So that, yeah.
Yeah.
And there's some footnotes in the US edition to help explain things that aren't necessarily in the Australian edition. So when I use terms like op shop, there's a little note saying like a thrift shop, things like that. And then some word like, sand, I think mine was sand pit and it got changed to sandbox, like that kind of stuff, like tiny little things. And Of course, because of the stubbornness that I have, every time someone was like, "Let us just change this," and I'm like, "No, no, no," and then I have to be like, "Actually, maybe that's not that important. Let's let that one go." But one that I did not let anyone change was Vegemite. And so, if you've read the book, you'll notice how prominent Vegemite is
Yes.
in the book. And for those who don't know what Vegemite is, it's a delicious to me, disgusting to others, black salty paste that you put on toast with butter. It's basically like a salty thing. You can also use it as like it's vegetarian or it's vegan actually, but like instead of like a beef stew thing, I don't know, bouillon.
Yeah.
My French
Bouillon,
is
yeah.
terrible. Yeah,
I
there we go.
I
Okay, great, thank you.
that is the primary use for the
Isn't it?
Marmite that I have
Yes,
in my kitchen. I'm like,
there you go.
sure, do I sometimes enjoy Marmite
Yeah.
on usually crumpets or
Yes, crumpets are
toast
much
with
better. That's my
butter?
preferred
Yeah,
because it
you get
seeps
more
through.
butter in the
Yum
holes.
yum
Yeah,
yum. I agree.
yeah,
I
it's the
agree.
whole thing. But
Yeah.
yes, it is much less common in
Yeah.
um in North America as a whole.
Yeah. But
But
I assume
yeah,
you've heard of it, right? You
oh yeah,
associate it with
of course.
Australia,
Yes,
right?
yes.
Great.
Vegemite is
Um,
Australia, Marmite is the UK.
Done. You got
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
So that was the one of the big changes that they wanted to kind of push for in the US book. They were like, "Can we make it peanut butter?" And I was like, "No." But not only because it wasn't accurate, but also because I would have to redraw everything. Like, because it like if you think about every single like it's not like you just go search find the word Vegemite replace with peanut butter. It is search find physically with your eyes every single word, and then also like redrawing the jar to make it be peanut butter.
hmm
Yeah.
And all the toast with it because peanut butter
Yep.
is a different color. Yeah,
Exactly. Yeah.
yeah,
So I pushed for that one and managed to get that through, which is good.
yeah.
But and then one I did lose was in South Australia. So I'm in Adelaide, South Australia. We are like the only state in Australia that that instead of Coke as our like main like sweet drink seller, it is outsold by an iced coffee. So like a milk-based drink. Everywhere else in Australia apparently is like, yes, fizzy drink. We love it. And South Australia's like, we really love this very specific sweet iced coffee that you get in a carton. Um, and they were like that because of the age of the character and how again stuff to do with the US something. They was like, kids can't drink iced coffee, even though it's it is very much just a sweet milk drink, probably with coffee flavor more than any caffeine. Um, yeah, so that had to be taken out, and I replaced that with milkshakes. So every time you read a milkshake in the book, it's actually a nice coffee. Yeah.
Oh, I mean
Little
the
fun fact, little
yeah,
tidbit.
the milkshake illustration and description that you did of your mom's milkshakes sounded great, but now Now I will imagine it involving coffee as well.
Yeah, like it's a coffee milkshake, but it is, yeah, that was the sort
Yeah.
of the flavor. Yeah. Anyway.
Oh, that's great. Well, and yeah, I feel like no shade to any editors. I feel like maybe they are underestimating the number of American kids who are familiar with Australian things at this point. There's like a whole generation of children who say certain things with an Australian accent,
Yeah.
thanks to the power of Bluey.
Yeah.
So I'm like, yeah, there are plenty of Australian things I could mention to the like under 10
Yeah.
set that their parents might not know what I'm talking about, but
Yeah.
the kids are hip with Australia all over
Yeah.
the world at this point.
Love it. Thanks,
But yeah.
Bluey. Yeah, I like it just I think I've had multiple editors both in Australia and the US because I've been working on the book 10 years in total, 4 years with the publisher. So it's Penguin Random House, various imprints, so Random House Kids or Graphic in the US and Tundra in Canada and Puffin in the UK. But most of my editors were the Australian and US teams. And I think they did a really good job, but particularly the later editors were more flexible and able to like yeah, the ones who I yeah, just because they're great. They did a really good job. Particularly my later US editor that I was working with. Um yeah, was really good.
Yeah.
But
Well,
also yeah, I
and it
understand
turned
I
out
also
very well.
understand I understand their like need to, they want to make sure as many people can understand it and read it as possible. But yeah, I'm just also very stubborn, so they had to put up with me being stubborn jerk occasionally.
Well, and I also appreciate their intention because I do now to like turn it back to talk for booksellers.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, I think this is a book that can be read and enjoyed by anyone, but I think there's a special place for it for people who grew up in families that look similar to yours or who grew up in close proximity to them. Like,
Hmm.
one of my best friends growing up, both of her brothers have different developmental and intellectual disabilities at different support needs. And
Hmm.
like, so I grew up not only with that friend, but other friends where there were these dynamics and people who did not always understand what the siblings who needed more help with certain things required,
Hmm.
or who didn't always understand social rules. Um, so I think this does a lot of great empathy building for people, and this is the kind of book that um, hopefully will help young people either feel seen um, and not alone uh, in their own experience, or will help them to see and understand people who are in their lives now or people they may encounter later on. Um, so yeah, I think it's great. I think
Thanks. Thanks,
you're
Katie.
very welcome.
I'm like,
I'm
"Ah."
like, I think you did a great job, and I think it's important work. So, and it's,
Thanks.
just visually delightful as well. So yeah,
Yeah,
I think
I really appreciate right at the start, I think you talked about it being accessible to read. And I'm glad because that was a big consideration for how I wrote and created this comic. Because I wanted it to like I make a lot of comics, I read a lot of comics, and people that do often like to do wacky things with the medium, which is great. It's very interesting, but it's not necessarily easy to read. And
Mhm.
even though, yeah, like in some ways, if you look at the book that I've done, it's very gridded. You can kind of see the pacing and patterns and like this. I threw in a few fun splash pages and sketchbook pages because that's the kind of stuff I absolutely love. But I did have to cut out a few of those just to fit in the page count. Um, but yeah, so that was a conscious decision. So I'm really glad because I wanted people who have maybe never read a comic to pick it up and go, I can read this. This is not hard to read. Because I wanted it to be as accessible to as many people as possible. And then hopefully also like obviously it's written in English, and fingers crossed it will get picked up for translation in other languages. But even if it's not, I hope that the visuals and art can help break some of those barriers as well, which is something that I just love about comics in general. Like I think it's just such a great medium for building empathy because you've got that instant visual hit as well as the context with some speech as well, and you can play around. There's a lot of fun things, and like I don't think I could have represented my brother in any other medium as well. Because so when you read the book, you'll notice that everyone else has just my font handwriting. It's my font of my handwriting, but it's a font, it's a text. Whereas Rob is all hand drawn. I drew all of Rob's speech hand drawn because to represent how it is different from how we communicate, and is like he makes all these different sounds that you can't really quite get across. So yeah, like I really wanted to emphasize that sort of communication difference, and sound difference, which I don't think without literally recording him, which I can't really ask his permission for, and then there's the like complications around if it was an animation or a film, like how do you get those sounds across? But in a comic, you can get it across quite naturally. It's part of comics language. So I really like that. And whereas prose similarly, you could probably do it, but it's not the same. I'm obviously very biased towards comics, but
yeah, I mean, with good reason. And yeah, it's funny, and all the time that I have spent like reading this and thinking about it and telling other people about it, for whatever reason, I had not really thought about the way that a visual medium works best to represent someone who is nonverbal, and the way that like Rob expresses himself. Like, yeah, of course, that yeah, I can't imagine another way that you could have done it nearly as effectively. So
thanks.
Yeah.
It does it. I have had parents ask me like, so how do I read Rob as into their children? And I'm like, however you like, really, like so that. But it is like it sort of proves the point of like it's really hard. It's really hard to get across and represent people like Rob, or who aren't able to, like, again, their connection and communication is so different. So yeah, comics are great, but also read it how you like. It's all good. It's in your own little home and space, and you're connecting with your kid. Excellent. Do it.
Oh, thank you so much for your time, for this conversation, for writing Oh Brother, and sharing it with the world. And by the world, I mean these 4 territories, plus all of the other ones that may get it. But yeah, thank you so much for being part of this. It was such a pleasure to get to talk with you.
Thank you so much for having me, and such interesting questions as well. I feel like I often have fairly similar questions, so it was really nice having some actually got me thinking about different things about the book, and particularly from a book, like talking about bookseller point of view as well. It's nice as an ex-bookseller. It's like, this is interesting information. I wish I knew this about books that I was selling at the time.
Well, now it's my turn to be stunned with compliments, so thank you. Thank you. I believe it's morning where you are, so have a great day.
Yeah, we're just about to hit lunch, so yeah, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you for listening to Booked, the bookstore education podcast brought to you by the American Booksellers Association. Don't forget to subscribe to the show on your favorite podcast app. Additional educational resources can always be found on the ABA site at www.bookweb.org. Happy reading!